for NTV Weekend Edition. These are today's top stories.
Kufikia mwendo wa saa 9:30 hivi tukasikia tu watu wameanza kupiga ruu kwa kitana, tukateremka tukapata tayari hadi ishateremka iko huko chini.
4 family members among 8 people who perished in the last 24 hours after heavy rains hit Murang'a County.
Tuko tunapanga ngaji, tukakuja tukaanza kupanga tutoroke tuende Banglo. Ambapo hii Banglo lazima tuende na passport. Na passport zetu si tuko tunajua ziko kwa nyumba, lakini passport zilikuwa zinaishi na kuna mtu alikuwa anajua Kenya anaishi.
A victim of sex trade narrates her experience in India, detailing how she was lured with an office job offer.
Mambo ya kusema tutulete another tier of government, hiyo ni mambo ambayo hatuwezi kukubali.
You know, the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya has been cagey. You know, he has been anxious.
Hatuna nafasi ya kufanya kazi hizo zingine na makelele na siasa ambayo haina maana.
Kenyatta Odinga handshake and calls for a referendum dominate political scene as DP Ruto keeps off politics.
And now he's living with another wife for your nyumba.
And we tell you why a couple skipped their own wedding, but the feast went on.
NTV Weekend Edition with Victoria Rubadiri.
Welcome to the broadcast. Our sign language interpreter this evening is Flora Atieno. Now, 8 people have lost their lives in Murang'a County in what the floods-related deaths are considered devastating. 5 of them died in landslides, while 3 were retrieved from River Madioya, which burst its banks. Now, 4 family members in Inoi village, Murang'a County, perished in a landslide that hit the area in the wee hours of the morning as they slept. Now, the landslide is said to have been caused by a heavy downpour that was experienced in the area last night and which caused the slope of a hill to come down, burying the 4 family members alive. As our reporter Melita Oletenges now reports, massive destruction has been experienced in Murang'a County over the last 24 hours due to the heavy rains.
Residents of Inoi village woke up to a dark morning. 4 family members dead as a result of a massive landslide that buried their house while they were asleep in the wee hours of the morning. Their livestock too was not spared, shoes and house debris, the only indicators here of the life that once was. Efforts to rescue the victims were futile. Residents shocked by the incident that claimed a husband, his wife and their 2 children. Benson Karari, unlucky to have lost his elder brother. 10 others were injured and taken to hospital, with some transferred to the Murang'a County Referral Hospital.
Hapa kufikia mwendo wa saa 9:30 hivi tukasikia tu watu wameanza kupiga ruu kwa kitana, tukateremka tukapata tayari hadi ishateremka iko huko chini. Kitu ya kwanza tuliokoa kijana yake yenye alikuwa hali mahututi, tukampeleka kabla tujamfikisha hospitali, akaaga kwa barabara kama tunaelekea. Kwa hiyo kuanzia hapo tulikuwa kwa hospitali, wengine walikuwa hapo wakapata wamefufua mzee na mama wenye tayari walikuwa wameaga. Mwisho ndio tulikuja tukafikia hapa tukapata msichana wake alikuwa nyuma yao na yeye alikuwa tulichukua wa mwisho.
The landslide attributed to heavy rains yesterday night, the landslide causing massive destruction of farms.
Kulikuwa na nyumba iko chini ya mchanga na iko na ng'ombe iko chini hapa chini ya mchanga. Iko na miti mikubwa iko chini ya mchanga kwa sababu ya sliding.
In fact, yesterday night we sent warnings to people to be on the lookout in case of adversities. And this is an area, this is an highland, we know that is susceptible to landslides.
An elderly woman has been reported dead in another landslide in a separate incident in Getuge area in Murang'a County. River Madioya also bursting its banks, displacing several families and causing massive destruction of crops in the farms. Kiharu constituency member of parliament Ndindi Nyoro has called on the government to help those affected. The authorities have called on those living on landslide prone areas to vacate until the rain subside.
So I'm asking the government to kindly also assist us with some emergency fund through the Ministry of Education. Waangalie zile mashule zote zimeharibiwa. Kuna shule inaitwa Merisho, the whole dining hall ilibomolewa na hii mvua, and so many other schools.
The national government pia pamoja na county government tunapanga kuhakikisha kwamba tumehamisha wale ambao wako hatarini. karibu familia kama 20 kuhakikisha kwamba wamehama wakati wa msimu wa mvua ili kusiwe na hiyo hatari ya kuangamia.
Bodies of the victims of the landslide in Inoi have since been taken to the Muri Rangers Hospital in yet more floods-related deaths. One body was retrieved yesterday from River Mathioya and 2 more bodies were retrieved today. River Mathioya, which burst its banks, has destroyed homes in Kambirwa village. Residents of Ihoi village in Murang'a County struggle to come to terms with the eerie ordeal that has befallen them. Recovery operations are ongoing, even as local authorities have issued an advisory to all those living in landslide-prone areas to vacate to safer grounds. Milita Oletenges, NTV, in Murang'a County.
Now, the government will supply all flood victims in the country with food. Devolution Cabinet Secretary Eugene Wamalwa, who is also in charge of the special programs docket, says there is enough rice, maize, beans, and cooking oil which shall be supplied to the affected counties. Wamalwa was speaking at Kakuyuni Primary School during his tour of flood-hit Kilifi County. He said the government would use the Kenya Defense Forces and police helicopters to supply relief food to all those who are in the areas that cannot be accessed by roads. He assured parents in affected zones that his ministry will hold talks with the Education Ministry to ensure all the students affected by the floods are allowed to go to school, as most of those parents lost everything in the disaster and can't afford to pay fees.
Twajua hamuna chochote. Kwa hivyo hatutarajii hata baada ya kutoka hapa ya kwamba baada ya mwezi moja mtakuwa na chakula, sababu kila kitu kimeenda, sio? So hakikisho letu ni kwamba tuna chakula cha kutosha. Kwa magala yetu ya serikali, Strategic Grain Reserves, tuko na zaidi ya magunia milioni 3 ya mahindi. Hiyo inatosha. Mambo ya maji ni shida pia. Na tumesema tutashirikiana na serikali ya county na tumeambia watu wa Coast Water ya kwamba lazima wahakikishe kuna zile water trucks za kutosha kuwaletea maji safi ili msipate ile ugonjwa ya kipindupindu.
And hundreds of people displaced by floods in Garissa accuse the government of neglecting them. The flood victims are being sheltered in centers set up at various schools in the county. The internally displaced persons driven from their homes by flood from the River Tana said they received no assistance from the government. They said most of their families are sick and facing hunger. Thousands of homes were affected, leaving hundreds of homeless after the River Tana burst its banks. Several of the flood victims have found shelter with extended families.
Watu wamemagika hapa tu, watoto kina mama vile wanaona machako iko namna hii. Na hakuna msaada yote tulifanywa. Wale wengine walikuja kutoka jana na juzi walikuwa wanaandika watu majina wanaondoka. Serikali tunaangalia huko na huko, hatuoni chochote anakuja kutusaidia.
All right, and joining me in studio now is the Kenya Red Cross Secretary General Abbas Gullet to make sense of all of this. Abbas, of course, you're at the forefront anytime we have a disaster in this country. But as it stands now, what does it look like in terms of the death toll and those who have been displaced? Of course, we've run several stories showing the devastation across the country.
So in terms of displaced, our estimates up to now, areas where we have assessed and seen Victoria, is about 42,180 households. We're talking about 242,000 Kenyans that have been displaced countrywide. The bulk of these are in Tana River and in Garissa. There is Kilifi, there is Garissa, Wajir, Isiolo, there is Nyeri, there is Kajiado now latest today, but Kilifi is also up, and many other counties. So what we're seeing is that in terms of death, there is an estimated number of about 100 now, and numbers keep on rising. Yeah. So we're saying that I don't think we expected the extent of the floods to be what it is today, and something must be done very urgently to actually probably even declare a national disaster at the moment, as where we are. The point we've reached is actually time for central government to declare a national disaster, in my opinion.
Now, you mentioned 242,000 people who have been displaced in the country
whose homes have been washed away.
Yeah, and I can only imagine the scale of the response needed for something like that. What has the process been so far, at least from the Kenya Red Cross side?
So from our side, what we have been doing through our local branches and county branches is to respond with shelter and non-food items, blankets, tarpaulins, question of mosquito nets, and clothing as where we can, soap for hygiene. But we've realized that now with big population in Tana River, and Tana River, by the way, you know, right from Tana North, which is in Bora Madogo area, all the way to Kipini in Garsen, there are about 12 or 13 displaced locations where people are. And Garissa on the other side also has a huge number of displaced population. So what we decided now, we need to move very fast in these sort of spontaneous camps that have come up, because people can't go back to their homes and they're in schools and other compounds, is now to try and provide clean water, to look at health intervention and sanitation, because we are afraid of cholera outbreak. There has been already prior to the floods, towards the last stage of the drought, both Tana River and Garissa had cholera outbreaks. And now with the current situation, with no latrines, we can only assume and expect that, God forbid, but health challenges of cholera outbreaks and other diseases would be, waterborne disease would be a major thing. So we've taken water treatment plants in both Garissa and Tana River to start cleaning up water and giving people clean treated water. Unfortunately, these are people who even under normal circumstances were not getting clean water. So now they'll get clean water by treating the water. But health is a major issue, and shelter. But we are asking then the government, both county and central government, to come out in big way to then provide food assistance to the population. If we had money, we would have given them cash, which is much more easier to do, so that they could go and buy what they want to buy, because even in terms of food, there are many areas we can't reach. And even the helicopters that are being used by, I think, the military and individual county government, like Governor Kilifi hired one the other day. I know today in Kajiado, Governor Lenko was assessing the area. What you can take with helicopter is very little in that way with these big numbers. So yes, for assessment, for outreaches, we can use helicopters. If we had bigger ones of the military, maybe. But the major issue today is housing, it is shelter, it is food, it is water, it is health.
Staying on the whole subject of shelter, because we ran a story earlier this week showing people in Garissa town wading through water literally at their shoulders, trying to salvage what they could from their homes. And it's a really compelling picture when you see that, and you wonder, what is life like after rescue, after you're taken to an emergency center and you have to now go back to your homes, which are pretty much
you go to nothing. I mean, those luckily who may have brick houses, you may find the house but it's empty. But a lot of those who are building mud houses, they've been washed away. So it's like, you know, you are destitute from one night to the other, Victoria. So we're going to start afresh. So what needs to be done when you declare a national disaster and resources are availed by both county and central government, then at least people can be compensated and they can be given some money to rebuild their lives all over again, because on their own they will not be. If you see Victoria all along, whether it was drought or not, or now floods, or even during other disasters, you'd find that it always hit the poor of the poorest. And unfortunately, if nothing is done to help them to recover from this, then you're just increasing the level of destitution. And this is why I'm saying where it has come to now, I think the rightful thing to do and sensible thing to do is to declare county by county, county disaster. And then from the county they go to the national level. And I think at a national level now, I think those who are advising the head of state should advise him now to declare national disaster, because then resources can be availed.
And speaking of which, one of the areas that was terribly affected right here in Nairobi, we don't have to go too far. 2 cars were crushed at a flat within Riruta satellite after a perimeter wall collapsed early this morning following heavy rains that have been wreaking havoc in the area since last night. Now, the cars belonging to 2 tenants residing in the flat were parked outside when the wall came tumbling down on them. As you can see the pictures there, tenants said the walls had been weakened by the heavy rains. Well, neighbors spent the better part of the day trying to rescue what remained of the 2 cars. They say Riruta and other parts of Dagoretti have been experiencing heavy rains, with some of the roads rendered impassable. The car owners have filed reports at the Riruta police station to claim compensation for their damaged property. Now, Babas, when you see such footage, of course, this being a result of maybe weak structures and infrastructure, that also coming up as a factor when it comes to the destruction that we see here in this country. How much of it is when it comes to the floods that affect us?
Well, you see, again, Victoria, I mean, we at times I find that we're not a learning society and a community, because the issue of Nairobi and people building on riverines has been a major issue over the years. Poor quality of construction, but also building on areas where they should not have built. Yeah. So again, you know, every time when a disaster occurs, then we have a knee-jerk reaction, and we say, you know, we're going to now X these houses, they should be demolished, and then the next morning you hear, you know, it's all quiet and it goes hush hush again, and you wait for the next disaster. I'm just saying that we really need to be a society and a community that if every professional body in this country play their rightful role and do not allow to be misused by any persons, rich or poor, and we follow the law to the latter in this country, will not be where we are. Right. But issue of natural disasters like now the rains, I mean, there were predictions, maybe not to this extent of now how destructive they are. But what are we learning from this also? And what are we going to do to avoid also this happening over and over? What are we doing to do water harvest and water management? I'm sure where we are, God forbid, but 3 months down the line, we come to August, September, we would be saying that these same areas are now flooded, they'll be crying of drought. And they'll be crying of drought to say that, you know, this water was never harvested. Now, thousands of farmed land with crops have now been affected, even in farming areas. So there are people who had put in their crop and the crop is destroyed. So what happens to them? They will also need food assistance. And this is why I'm saying planning at a county level, at a national level, we must rethink afresh in how we manage to deal with disasters and emergencies. We're not the only country where, you know, floods and rains occur as it happens every year, because we move from one disaster to another. It is flood today, tomorrow it's drought. Few months later, 6 months down the road, rains have failed, now it's drought. It is, you know, an epidemic. There are choleras. I mean, choleras in most of these towns, because of the filth that we have in our counties and in the cities. People are always having cholera outbreak. Every month we are responding to a cholera in this country. There was a time a couple of years ago, 28 counties had cholera outbreak in this country. And many people don't see this or don't know this. So I think the whole health, water, sanitation system, disaster management need to be relooked. Most of the counties do not even have a disaster policy or disaster law. Even the national one need to be finalized. I know it's moved from where it was some 2 or 3 years ago, but I think this should be given a priority. We should not be talking about this subject year in, year out, or twice in a year. It is quite shameful and quite frustrating.
Let's talk about lessons learned. For instance, Budalangi, for a change, is not complaining about flooding because of dikes that were constructed in that area. It used to be the epicenter of floods. Every year, perennial floods in Budalangi. And that happens to be a success story, at least for this period of time. What are some of the immediate measures that we can put in place to deal with?
So again, lowlands, Kano Plains, Kisumu, Nyakach, Migori, these areas, the same thing can be done. Along the Tana, you know, I got a phone call from Kenyan last Tuesday, very early in the morning, 6 in the morning, to be informed by Kenyan colleagues who we keep in touch during such seasons that all the dams were spilling because of the volumes of water upstream on Mount Kenya were huge. So it's not even about opening gates, but it's just that when the level rises to a certain level, it spills over. Now, from the last dam to the last point of water discharging into the Indian Ocean, Victoria is 72 hours. So what we do? Again, thanks to Safaricom and the Communication Commission of Kenya, where we now have a bulk SMSing system. We actually sent, since March, over 15 million messages on people's mobiles in various parts of the country when we get indication that it's going to overflow, to tell them move to higher grounds. But how far can they go? And you know, it's been raining in those areas, but the recent flooding now of this week in Garissa and in Tana River is largely water upstream that was overflowing, and it went and hit, because most of this land are lowlands. Now, do we need to put other dams, even in between Garissa and Kitui, and between Garissa and Tana River, and between Tana River, Hola, and Garsen, on these other areas? Should we put more more dams so that these dams can be dammed and can be used during dry season to irrigate these people's farms on both sides of the Tana River, Garissa side? And these are challenges. But what I'm just saying is that really, I think as a country, we must sit back, take stock of this matter once and for all. And I would call for the central government actually to take leadership in this matter as a matter of priority, as a matter of urgency, because we can't be here every 6 months, every 1 year, every 2 years. Time has come, we must now think out of the box and, you know, really take stock and then come with a new strategy on how to deal with these issues, because we should, the rains can't beat us, drought can't beat us, and food insecurity can't be there anymore. I mean, we can't be giving Kenyans food handouts every 6 months, every 9 months, or every year. I mean, people, we should have other forms of doing this completely as a nation.
You mentioned the government having to take a lead when it comes to emergency and disaster response. Let's talk about funds. Money is always a huge issue when it comes to response. What does the funding gap look like? What do we need to ensure that we have a formidable response mechanism?
The government, and I know they're working on this with Treasury and with World Bank and others, the need to set up a national disaster fund to respond to various kind of emergencies is long overdue, Victoria. Today we don't have special funds set aside for emergencies as a nation, leave alone even the counties. And even as we, Red Cross, and you know, people then say every time Red Cross launches an appeal is, you know, what are we doing? Why are we here again? Why didn't you ask for this before? Why is the government not financing you? And these are the issues we need to discuss. But every time we'll have to go to the Kenyan public to become the keepers of their brothers and sisters. I mean, we launched a drought appeal, earlier this year, and before even the drought appeal is fully implemented, here we have floods. And these people, if we need to help them, even we as Red Cross need resources, because we are not financed by the government. I can say that. It's through philanthropy, is through International Red Cross and other partners who support us to respond. So all the work that you see us doing is money that we've tried to raise through fundraising both locally and internationally. But we are saying its time has come when a national disaster management system is set up fully. There must be a regulatory body that regulates this whole, and funds must be kept aside. And institutions like Red Cross and other actors are given resources to complement the efforts of the government, both at the county level and at a national level, because otherwise we'll just be, firefighting as we have done in the past many years.
Right. Great. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time, Abbas. Always a pleasure. And certainly we need to look at those areas. Preparation, so we don't have to keep having this perennial flood issue. Coordination between the agencies and, of course, funds, a very necessary resource when it comes to responding to emergencies in this country. Let's take a short break here on NTV Weekend Edition. Much more ahead, including...
Tuko tunapanga ngaji, tukakuja tukaanza kupanga tutoroke tuende Banglo, ambapo hii Banglo lazima tuende na passport. Na passport zetu si tuko tunajua ziko kwa nyumba, lakini passport zilikuwa zinaishi na kuna mtu alikuwa anajua penye anaishi.
A victim of sex trade narrates her experience in India, detailing how she was lured with an office job offer. Welcome back. Now, Kenyan youth desperate to gain employment are going overseas in search of income that they believe will pull them out of poverty, only to find themselves as sex slaves or worse, dead. Tonight, NTV highlights the story of Faith James, not her real name, as she tells us of a journey to India seeking work in the IT sector, only to find herself in an escort service. Faith, who was helped back home by Foreign Affairs Chief Administrative Secretary Ababu Namwamba, tells harrowing tales of false promises and what she claims is forced prostitution.
The story of young Kenyan women who have been caught up in the allure of lucrative jobs in foreign countries has been told before. In March 2018, the Daily Nation published the plight of young Kenyan women trapped in India after suffering at the hand of their would-be employers. On the night of April 24th, two of the three ladies who had come to the High Commission in Delhi for weeks before Foreign Affairs CAS Ababu Namwamba came to their aid, left India returning home, breathing a sigh of relief. One of the young girls, who we have named Faith James to protect her identity, sat down with us and gave a harrowing account of how life was in a foreign country. Faith, who was raised in one of Nairobi's slums, says she first got the idea of employment in a foreign land through a man called Maki, also known as Mark Muigai, a local travel agent who helped her get the required documentation to India.
Huyo Maki ndio niliconnectianga kwa tumepatana naye Facebook, akaniambia niende kwa ofisi zake. Kwenda kwa ofisi zake nikamwambia mimi sina passport, kama kuna bat naweza kubaya kila kitu, wako na makazi mingi, hata ni maagent wametravelisha watu waje kwa na shida. Akanambia ni India, lakini anataka niongee na nani? Mdosi wangu. Mdosi wangu alikuwa kwa Facebook.
So mimi uko na clients, my clients come wananiambia nifanyie visa na kufanyia visa and you go.
Faith says she was connected to a Kenyan woman living in India who would be her employer at a farm where she would supposedly work in an IT office. The lady, who identifies herself as Jason Stacy on her social media pages, was last active in March 2018 on both Facebook and WhatsApp platforms, is captured receiving Faith at the airport in India when she landed.
Unaweza fanya kazi gani? Nikamwambia ya computer. Akanambia huku kuna job mingi, lakini kama hiyo ndio unataka ni sawa. Nikamuuliza watalipa how much, akanambia per week 40,000.
Kuni Stacy alimwambia ninafanya job gani? Prostitute. Unajua ama demo akinipatia hizo vitu, hizo visa. Mimi fanya tu visa. Mimi nafanya visa, mimi sijali kenye unaenda kufanya huko nje.
Faith said that on arrival in India, she met her employer who took her to her house. To her, she looked like a rich person, and in her house were several computers. She was promised that she would be trained on how to use them later. Things changed when she was taken to a local club and only asked to take a seat and smile at men around. She was left there alone. Faith was not alone. There were two other young ladies with similar stories.
Si ubongana mostly na FB. Sasa yake kani call akaniambia, ni aje? Na sasa najui nini. Alafu sasa shida aongeangi. Lazima alienda India akanyamaza. Ni ile ananitext mara moja. The first days alienda alikuwa anabonga. Lakini kacha kubonga, sasa mimi nikajua odema kwa tu sawa.
Pelekwa place nyingine ilikuwa inaitwa Shatapur, tukapelekwa kwa group nyingine inaitwa Askas. Tukaambiwa mkijaribu kutoroka mtajua. Sasa
in an interview with the Daily Nation, Foreign Affairs CAS Ababu Namwamba said that the country is becoming a lucrative destination for unsuspecting girls. He said the government plans to investigate with the aim of identifying, locating, isolating and destroying the trafficking syndicate from the source to the conveyor belt. Leila Mohammed, NTV.
And after that story on sex slavery in India, tomorrow NTV's Rose Wangoi will delve into the persistent problem of slavery in the UAE. Make sure you tune in for the 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. bulletins and get first-hand accounts from those who have lived the experience on this compelling feature-length documentary dubbed Slavery in the Gulf. Here now is a short promo of that special feature.
Hundreds of young women in Kenya travel to countries like Saudi Arabia, Oman and Qatar hoping to earn a better living.
Nilipitia mitihani migumu sana huko, kupigwa, kuteswa.
Hiyo chakula yenye watakula hapo, chenye itabaki ndio hiyo utaitwa sasa uje uchukue.
I was raped by 4 men. 4 men.
But many end up exploited, abused, threatened and isolated by their employers.
Unakuta unalala kama lisani moja ambapo hujazoea. Kama Yesu umesimama atakugonganisha na ukuta, uko anatumia hanga chuma, atakugonga nayo ile sana.
Tukafanya mpango wa postmortem, kana alikuwa strangled kwa sababu ilikuwa hii kichwa tokivuta hivi unaona inarudi karibu kuangalia juu.
Msichana wangu alipata kazi huko Saudi Arabia. Ndio aligonjeka kwa siku moja na kuaga.
Slavery in the Gulf, sure to be nothing short of riveting. So tune in tomorrow at 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. for that documentary. Now on to politics. ODM leader Raila Odinga insists the constitution must be changed to make devolution work. The ODM leader has been proposing a 3-tier system of government to ensure equitable development across the country. He further defended his peace pact with President Uhuru Kenyatta, saying it was not imposed on them by foreign nations.
Former Prime Minister Raila Odinga was in Kajiado County for what he says was a session to engage the people there on the National Reconciliation Initiative, born of the peace pact between him and President Uhuru Kenyatta, that the two leaders hope will heal the nation.
Na tukasema tunashindana kwa mambo ya uchaguzi. Sasa kama utakuwa pande ile, wewe ni rais. Na ile pande hii ni rais. Nchi itakuwa mbili. Kenya tutagawanya katikati. Pande hii Uhuru, pande hii Raila.
Odinga says the pact was their own initiative and was not imposed on them by anyone.
Uhuru akanitafuta na mimi nikamtafuta. Tukapatana. Tukaketi chini. Tukaongea kama watu wazima. Tukatafuta, tukasema kuna shida mingi katika taifa letu.
The former premier was also building momentum for a change in the constitution to create a 3-tier system of government. He says it's the only way devolution will work. He first tabled a proposal while delivering the keynote address at this year's devolution conference. The third structure would be a bridge between the national and county governments to ensure a seamless relationship between the two levels of government and ensure equitable development across the country.
Sisi tumesema ati tuangalie uchaguzi ambao inakuja. Kuna watu ambao wanaangalia tu uchaguzi 2022. Mimi nitakuwa candidate, candidate ya nini? Sisi tunaangalia maslahi ya Wakenya wakati huu, si ya 2022.
Deputy President William Ruto has flatly rejected any amendments to the constitution to redistribute executive power to a prime minister and deputies, and Odinga's proposal could see the two leaders on opposing sides yet again.
Mwingine sisemi ati hakuna kitu kitabadilishwa hapa. Ati wengine wanatafuta ubinafsi. Raila hajatafuta kazi kwa mtu yoyote. Sitaji kazi.
Odinga was speaking in Engorika village, Kajiado Central, where he attended a homecoming ceremony for John Lois, who vied for the Kajiado Central ward seat in a recent by-election.
And ODM members of parliament insist that the deputy president should brace himself for a referendum in the run-up to the 2022 general election. Speaking in Rubadiri, Migori County, the opposition legislators said it was time that the country put aside ethnicity in determining the top leadership of the nation. The MPs lauded the handshake between their leader, Raila Odinga, and the president, terming it as the beginning of national cohesion and equality.
Whoever will be opposing the handshake, that is the enemy of the people of Kenya. And I want to assure you that we are not ready to give them any room at all to spoil the gains we have made from the handshake.
Our message is very clear, that Kenya has gotten to a point where we can no longer tolerate the politics of ethnicity. We will not allow Kenya to practice the politics of tribalism, where two communities gang up. Then they get hold of our national resources and they eat and they steal.
Honorable Ruto, Your Excellency Ruto, you either choose to be the president of the Republic of Kenya or to be the official opposition of the Republic of Kenya. Na kama unataka kuwa president wa Republic of Kenya, anza kuondoa watu wanaitwa Murkomen, wale wanakudanganya. Nuanze kuondoa watu wanaitwa Aden wale wa kuongea tu. Na kama unataka kuwa the official opposition wa Republic of Kenya, you are on the right track.
Wale watu wanasema kwamba hii handshake ni ya 2022, sijui tunataka kubadilisha katiba. This is what I want to say to William Samoei Ruto. In the last referendum, you opposed the constitution because you said that 20% of it was bad. It is now 8 years since we put in place that constitution. That constitution has served us, but we are saying that it is now time to revisit that constitution so that we may be able to find out what is it that bedevils us every single 5 years.
And ANC party leader Musalia Mudavadi and his Ford Kenya counterpart Moses Wetangula have rejected calls for a three-tier government as proposed by opposition leader Raila Odinga. The two, who were accompanied by former Senator Boni Halwale, say they will not allow a small group of leaders to drive the political agenda for selfish purposes.
Hii mchezo yenu yenye mnataka tupendue katiba ili nyinyi watatu mjiamulie ni nani atakuwa rais, nani atakuwa prime minister na nani atakuwa deputy. I want to tell you, we are going to face you at the referendum and we are going to defeat you in that hyenas agenda ambayo iko personal.
Mambo ya kusema ati tulete another tier of government, hiyo ni mambo ambayo hatuwezi kukubali. Tuna ugatuzi na tuna jukumu ya kuhakikisha ugatuzi unafanya kazi. How can you start an experiment before the experiment you are going on with has not been perfected? Hiyo hatukubali, and we don't want this populist stance ya Kenya ya kuleta watu mfurugano alafu tuna drop. So wale wanataka third tier ya serikali, hiyo ni mambo yao.
Kuhusu leadership, tunataka leadership ambayo itakuwa inclusive, ambayo itajumulisha watu wote na ambayo itakuwa accountable. Na nimetaja kidogo kuhusu Bomas draft, tukisema kwamba Bomas draft ambayo tuliweka, tulikuwa tunataka system karibu kama ya Ufrani.
And Deputy President William Ruto maintains that there is no division in the Jubilee Party, dismissing speculation that the unity of the country's governing party is on the rocks following the coming together of opposition leader Raila Odinga and President Kenyatta weeks ago. The Deputy President is calling for an end to politics.
Hatuna nafasi ya kufanya kazi hizo zingine na makelele na siasa ambayo haina maana. Mumesikia rais ametangaza juzi ya kwamba tukomeshe mambo ya siasa, na hiyo ni amri kwa wanajubilii wote. Hakuna mambo ya siasa tena, tuweke kando. Mambo ambayo yako sasa ni vile tutaendesha kuunganisha wa Kenya, kwa sababu ndio msimamo na sera ya Jubilee, na maendeleo, vile tutahakikisha kwamba ahadi ya manifesto ya Jubilee inatimia.
we're taking a short break here on NTV Weekend Edition. Coming up, a story of food over love.
And now he's living with another wife for your nyumba.
We tell you why a couple skipped their own wedding, but the feast went on. Welcome back. Now, there was drama at Day Gardens in Ruiru, Kiambu County after a woman showed up at her husband's wedding reception. Now, the woman, Elizabeth Wairemu, says her husband was getting married to a third wife after infecting her with HIV and abandoning her.
Elizabeth Wairemu showed up with a mission to disrupt her ex-husband's wedding. She was at the wedding reception to tell of the pain she says her husband inflicted on her. She was accompanied by her sister and daughter.
Want to stop the wedding. It has already happened. And we know the Constitution. He has a right to have as many wives as he wants, okay? But he does not have a right to infect women with AIDS. He infected my sister with AIDS. He killed his first wife with AIDS and a baby, infected his son, and then he throws after my sister lands. He makes my sister stop working at the Intercontinental, where she had a gainful employment, okay?
My dad knew that he had AIDS and he didn't want to tell my mom. He'd send her to a specific hospital.
Yeah,
to a specific doctor. So that the doctor would not disclose. Yeah. They had an agreement. So my mom would always be sent to this one doctor. Why? So that he cannot disclose.
Na huyo bibi wa kwanza alikufa. Na ndio nikuje kujua what killed the woman ni mtoto wa kwanza yule mtoto mwenye aliachwa na yule bibi wa kwanza. niye nilimpeleka hospitali, he was getting sick each and every time. Alikuanga akipata ugonjwa.
Those who attended the wedding watched in disbelief as the women lashed out in anger. According to them, the missing groom kicked out his second wife Elizabeth from her matrimonial home. She claims he infected her with HIV/AIDS and took away her documents, fearing that she will report him to the authorities.
He's broken my mother's legs a few times so that she cannot leave the house. What kind of a man does that?
This was just, we were coming to give people information. Who this person is.
The trio may have prevented the couple from accessing the wedding reception, but not the guests. Members of the bridal party posed for photos gleefully as the guests enjoyed the wedding feast. Ann Okumu, NTV.
And 4 individuals were arrested in Eldoret after a 35 million shilling consignment of Mandrax, which is a sedative and hypnotic medication, was found in the possession. Now, 3 KRA officials and 1 officer attached to the Kenya Pharmacy and Poisons Board were nabbed after being suspected of smuggling 80,000 capsules of Mandrax into the country. Rift Valley Regional Coordinator Mongo Chimwaga said that the consignment was allegedly diverted to the Eldoret International Airport from JKIA after it was allegedly received from Dubai. Uasin Gishu County Deputy Governor Daniel Chemno said they will not allow trading of drugs in the area and the country as a whole, noting that it has destroyed the lives of thousands of youth. We're taking another short break here on NTV Weekend Edition. Much more ahead. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now, armed with a passion she developed at a tender age for achieving gender equality in the continent, Dina Musindarwezo has made great strides in realizing the same in different capacities. Working at the helm of the African Women's Development and Communication Network, or FEMNET, a Pan-African feminist women's rights network, has been her latest assignment. Gladys Kashanja spoke to the outgoing executive director of FEMNET on her journey in this week's Women and Power.
Yeah, it's already mixed. Everything is mixed.
Okay, fine. I just remembered.
A Rwandese born in Uganda to parents who had fled the ethnic conflict in the land of many hills, Dina Musindarwezo was exposed to incidents of gender inequality at a tender age.
I observed a lot of limitations simply because someone is a girl or a woman. And in my adulthood, when I said working, again, it was very clear that the kind of challenges women are facing are really huge, you know, from facing violence, whether it is domestic violence, whether it is violence in the streets, whether it is violence at workplace, whether the fact that, you know, it is few women leading, especially in Uganda, whether it is the fact that women don't own and control properties that are crucial, such as land, despite the fact that they're the ones growing food that we eat. It was very clear to me that women are marginalized all the time, from childhood to adulthood, in the house, both in the domestic sphere but also in the public sphere.
38-year-old Dina has come a long way in being part of realizing gender equality in the continent, and the best example is her home country.
Unfortunately, the fact that immediately after the genocide, the population of women was 70%. And so it was very clear that the country has no choice but to depend on women for its development. And I think the president of Rwanda, Kagame, being a very clever man, he realized that he definitely needs to tap into that potential of women for him to be successful.
A walk down memory lane, and it is obvious that this executive director of the African Women's Development and Communication Network, FEMNET, was intentionally mapped out.
When I was graduating from Makerere University in Uganda, where I did my bachelor's degree in development studies, and some of the classes I took were on gender equality and women's rights, and actually that's where my interest in moving this personal experience to professionalism started, because it kind of made it clear of all the things I've been experiencing without knowing why, you know.
FEMNET, one of the largest Pan-African feminist women's rights group, represents women across 43 countries in Africa and has over 600 members, all with a purpose to achieve gender equality in the continent. 6 years since she took over its leadership, Dina looks back at a trail of great strides.
We have influenced various policies, we have influenced different development frameworks, including the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, or what people call SDGs, or Sustainable Development Goals, where FEMNET was at the forefront of mobilizing African women and girls across the continent to influence that framework, because we knew it is an important framework that is going to influence how governments make their plans and how they allocate resources.
Though determined to change the narrative, this gender equality expert speaks of obstacles that have delayed greater achievement.
Governments have to be more serious about that. It is beyond signing that document, you know. It's about investment of resources, both human resources and financial resources. It's about trusting women as equal citizens of their countries and really believing in them that they can lead, they can control resources. If they are leading in household, they can as well lead in parliaments and in cabinets and in other places, and they can do it well.
Though this wife and mother has handed over the baton in the leadership of FEMNET, her heart still beats to the rhythm of women empowerment.
We need to understand that there is common challenges that we face, and that if we come together and support each other as sisters, we can be able to achieve better. I believe that that is possible if we work together as in sisterhood, as we always say in the women's movement.
For Women in Power, my name is Gladys Kashanja.
Great legacy that Dina is already leaving behind, even though she's no longer with Femnet. The former U.S. President Barack Obama put it this way: how do you expect to succeed when half of your team is sitting on the bench? All right, so we need more involvement from women when it comes to the success of our nations. Now moving on to another story, a police officer attached to Raraka police station today was stabbed and fatally shot in a matatu carjacking incident along the Thika superhighway. Two other passengers who were injured were rushed to MSF clinic along Juja Road in stable condition. The suspected robbers are said to have boarded the Neo Kenya Mpya bus, which was headed in the direction of Thika at the drive-in bumps. They started robbing passengers in the bus from the Garden City stage all the way to Ruiru Kimbo and ordered the driver to turn back at the stage. They alighted the bus shortly after it passed Babadogo. The man driving the bus is said to have alighted after passengers demanded that it be driven to a police station. At that point, yet another man who claimed to be the real driver took charge and drove the bus to GSU roundabout. He was later arrested, as witnesses said they did not see him getting removed from his seat since boarding the bus. Investigations into the incident are ongoing. The deceased officer's body was taken to Kenyatta University Hospital mortuary awaiting a post-mortem. All right, 2 minutes to the top of the hour. We take our last break here on NTV Weekend Edition. Sports news up next with Brian Otwal.
Welcome to NTV Sport. My name is Brian Otuala. Kenya will take on South Africa at 7:52 a.m. Sunday morning in the main cup quarter-final of the Singapore 7th leg of the World Rugby Sevens Series. Shujaa beat USA 33-14 in their final Pool B match to collect their second win of the pool after earlier thrashing France and losing to England. Having lost once and won once, Kenya needed to win against semi-final matches. Machine defeated Western Bulls 18-0 at the University of Nairobi grounds to make a comeback after a season in the championship. Oilers, coached by former Kenya Sevens international Gibson Weru, saw off Kisumu 32-3 to get promoted to the Kenya Cup for the first time. Machine and Oilers will face off in the championship final. Meanwhile, Homeboys will battle with Impala Saracens in the final of the Enterprise Cup. The DJs defeated defending champions KCB 12-10, while the Saris won 16-13 at the death against Kabras Sugar. And FC Leopards and Vihiga United played out a 2-2 draw in Saturday's solitary Kenyan Premier League game played at the Thika Stadium. Ingwe are now winless in 5 games and lie 5th on the log, while Vihiga snapped a 2-game winless run to climb to 13th on the log. On Sunday, second-placed Mathare United host league leaders Gor Mahia, seeking to close the gap on the defending champions. Third-placed Bandari play Nakumatt FC, Ulinzi face Chemelil Sugar, Posta Rangers battle Kariobangi Sharks, Sofapaka welcome Wazito FC, Thika United tackled Nzoia Sugar, while Tusker face off with Sony Sugar. Kakamega Homeboys play Zoo Kericho in the only game on Monday. And with the title won, it is down to relegation battles in the EPL. Stoke City are still in the fight to avoid relegation after their hard-fought barren draw against UEFA Champions League semi-finalist Liverpool. Winless in 12 league games, the Potters are 3 points adrift of